July 1995. I have no anecdotes to share and 10 books to cover, so let's jump right in. The first book that I read in July of 1995 is a book with a very long title: The Collected Stories of Philip K. Dick, Volume 1, The Short Happy Life of the Brown Oxford, by Philip K. Dick. So I want to say White Wolf started publishing these collections. I could be wrong about that. I should have double checked, but I didn't. Uh, but the plan was to publish these collections of basically all of Philip K. Dick's work. I can't remember if it was meant to be in chronological order, but this book does have a bunch of his earliest stories. And uh, the biggest one probably is Paycheck, which was made into a movie with Ben Affleck. And the one that stands out to me the most is a story that is told from a dog's perspective. And I'm not going to tell you what happens in that story because you should read it for yourself. I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick, although there's tons of his stuff that I have not read, but I've enjoyed pretty much everything that I have read. And of course, he deals a lot with identity and what it means to be human and how we can do we really understand reality. And so this is just a bunch of little short stories that deal with issues like that. Not all of them necessarily, but again, Paycheck, it has to do with memory and how that affects reality, what we believe is reality. But it's good stuff. I didn't I don't know if they even finished publishing this entire set that they were supposed to do, but this was the first one. It did come out, and I had it and I read it. Collected Stories of Philip K. Dick, Volume 1. Short Happy Life of the Brown Oxford. There you go. Book number 2, we're going in a completely different direction. Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula by Lauren D. Esselman. And it is what it says it is. And I believe it basically takes place ish during the events of Dracula. It's been a while since I read it, but it has to do with a ship that runs aground in England with a dead cat. Nobody alive on board. The captain's been drained of blood, which of course is a big scene, a big thing that happens in Dracula. And Sherlock Holmes is going to take the case. This is part of Titan Books series, the Continuing Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, maybe? Don't remember. They have like 2 different Sherlock Holmes series going on. I'm not sure what differentiates them, how they decide which goes where. I have a huge stack from one series, and all the covers are very similar. And then this one is part of this other series, and all their covers are very similar. I chose the one that I have because of some of the authors, Guy Adams, James Lovegrove, etc. But anyway, this book is still available. And as I said, it's part of a huge Sherlock Holmes library. And it's Holmes versus Dracula. Come on. Then we have some nonfiction. Communion by Whitley Strieber, or Strieber, or however you say his name. And this has been made into a movie. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to say Strieber, Whitley Strieber, tells us in this book the story of his abduction by alien life forms. And apparently he's had this problem throughout his life. I think there's a sequel. He has a book, I think it's called Majestic. That might be, I don't know. Anyway, Communion. The book that put him on the map, perhaps. He was a science fiction and horror writer, I believe. Before this, he wrote The Wolfen. Or is it just Wolfen? But Communion is, I think, the book that people know. And I don't recall. I went to a Borders and saw him give a talk and had him autograph this book. I do not have it anymore. I believe this is the book I had him autograph, so I got to meet him. I do not believe it happened. I do not believe that we have ever been visited by extraterrestrials because of science, distances too far, all that stuff. But it's still something interesting to read. I've never seen the movie. And then, man, we're jumping all over the place. Next up, Spider-Man: Carnage in New York by David Michelini, I don't know, and Dean Wesley Smith. There's a simple name to pronounce. Spider-Man novel, and basically the government is trying to separate the Carnage symbiote from Cletus Cassidy. Carnage escapes. Spider-Man has to take him down. A fun, simple, maybe the story stretched out a bit to fill a novel, but a nice Spider-Man story. Let's get back to some science fiction. And my favorite science fiction author, The Caves of Steel by Isaac Asimov. This is the first, I believe, in the robot mysteries. I think there's 3 officially. There might be maybe 4. I don't know. They all tie into the Foundation stuff, and so many of his books tie together. It's hard to keep them all straight. But anyway, this is the book that introduces us to Detective Elijah Bailey. You can see me looking at my notes. And he's on Earth, but man, the lighting keeps changing. It keeps getting darker and lighter. I don't know what to do about that. Excuse me. But anyway, so Elijah Bailey, he's a detective on Earth, and he does not like the people who live in space, spacers, and he doesn't like robots. But he is sent, I believe, off Earth because a very prominent spacer is killed, and he is teamed up with R. Daniel Oliva, however you say that, and the R stands for robot. So we've got a human detective, a robot detective, and it just so happens that that robot looks like the victim. But it's almost like one of the short stories from I, Robot expanded into novel length, theme-wise. I don't mean that it feels like a short story that was just expanded to fill up a book, unlike maybe that Spider-Man book, because it's fantastic. I love these books. It's got mystery, it's science fiction, you've got the clash of the humans and the robots, a theme very strong in the Will Smith I, Robot movie. But yeah, Caves of Steel, fantastic book. Love Asimov. Another nonfiction. I just realized there's 3 nonfiction books this month. Okay. I don't know if it matters how I pronounce these made-up words. Wampeters, Foma, and Grand Falloons by Kurt Vonnegut. And this is just a collection of essays, speeches, essays, articles that Kurt Vonnegut wrote. So you're actually getting basically Kurt Vonnegut's voice as opposed to when he's writing fiction and he can, uses whatever voice is necessary for the story. Probably, I don't remember much about it, but I mean, it's Kurt Vonnegut, so I'm assuming that it was pretty good. I don't know. Don't remember. Let's move on. Man, I was so eclectic in July of 1995 for some reason. Next up is Gunslinger by Ed Gorman. And I don't know why I have it written in my book that way. It's a collection of short stories, but it was edited by Martin H. Greenberg, I believe, and Bill Pronzini. Even though they're all stories by Ed Gorman, Greenberg and Pronzini apparently decided to pick his best Western short stories and put them together. The cover of the book is fantastic, very old school, very pulp. And I mean, Ed Gorman was a great writer, and he wrote really interesting Westerns. The Gunslinger might be novella length. I don't know. But they just grabbed a bunch of his best westerns and threw them together in this short story collection. Excuse me. Then we have Columbo, The Helter Skelter Murders by William Harrington. And this rich man and his wife, I don't know, a couple people are killed, and Columbo thinks maybe it's the Manson cult reactivating, as it were. Huge fan of Columbo, and I think this is a pretty good book, if I remember correctly. There's a few Columbo novels, and I thought I was going to borrow my mother's copy so I could have something to hold up, but she doesn't have it anymore. She gave it away to my sister. But yeah, Columbo taking on possibly a murderous cult. Don't know. You'll have to read it to find out. All right, then we have Walking Wolf by Nancy A. Collins. This is the story of Billy Skillet, who's over 150 years old. I believe he's telling us the story. So it's basically his life story. He was the child of a werewolf and a human woman. Werewolf father, human woman mother. And he was abandoned. I don't remember what happened. Something. He ended up being raised by Comanches. And this is just him telling about all his adventures, all the things he's gone through, being accepted by the Native Americans, being hounded by the white man. He meets famous people, maybe gets caught up in famous events. He fights some vampires, and there's a guy, is it Witch Hunter Jones? Something monster, I don't know. Some guy, a nemesis that he has, who may be still coming for him. But it's Nancy A. Collins. I discovered her when she was writing Swamp Thing, and great author. She's got some good stuff. And then finally, the last nonfiction book, the last book that I read in July of 1995. And I'll tell you right now, I read this book because I saw the movie based on this book, and I'm going to talk about the movie probably a little more than the book, because the movie's more memorable, and I've seen it many, many times. But anyway, the book is If You Could See What I Hear by Tom Sullivan and Derek Gill. And it's Tom Sullivan's autobiography, memoir. Again, really don't know the difference. But Tom Sullivan was born blind and went on to lead a fascinating life. He was a golfer, and he did all these other things. And so the book, very interesting book. One that I would read again, given the time. And as I said, I read it because the movie was on rotation on HBO, and I would watch it all the time. It starred Mark Singer as Tom Sullivan. And Mark Singer, probably best known for either Beastmaster or the TV show V. And I don't remember anybody else that was in it. I want to say Ray Don Chong, but I could be wrong about that. But the movie, there are some really heartfelt moments, but I just remember the funny moments. And one of the things, and I remember this from the book as well, is Tom Sullivan talking about his brother convincing him that he was wearing his socks on the wrong feet, and everybody was laughing at him when he'd go to school. This is when he was a little kid. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And his brother's like, "Yeah, there's a left sock and a right sock, and you've been putting them on the wrong feet, and everybody's staring at you when you walk around." Which of course is not true. And then in the movie, and I don't remember if this was in the book, in the movie, he's in college, I believe, and he's in bed with his girlfriend. And she says they've had sex, they're laying there naked, and she says, "How can you tell that I'm different? Or how do you know I'm different?" Something like that. And he says, "Well, you've got all these nice, bumps and curves all over you." And she says, "No, I mean, how do you know that I'm black?" And he bolts up in bed and says, "Oh no, And she gets this really worried look on her face. She's like, what? What's the matter? He says, this means I'm colorblind too. Thought that was hilarious. Mark Singer delivers the line much better than I do. And then the other one that stands out for me is always, I don't remember why he's out with friends and they're partying, doing whatever. And Tom Sullivan, the blind guy, is driving the car. He's driving with his friends, gets pulled over by the cops, and the cop asks for his license. And he says, I don't have a license, I'm blind. And the cop says, well, why are you driving the car if you're blind? And he says, because I'm the only one that's sober. Wow. I'm not doing stand-up. I'll tell you that right now. Crickets. Anyway, fantastic movie. Really interesting book. Tom Sullivan was an interesting guy. I don't know if he's still alive. But if you could see what I hear, I recommend both the book and the movie, if you can find either one. And that is it. That is what I read in July of 1995. 10 books. See, things just got lighter. Is it me leaning forward, moving back? I don't know. Seems like it's getting dark again. What are you going to do? That's it. 1995, July, 10 books, 3 nonfiction. I think a wide variety. I've got mystery and horror and westerns and sci-fi and all sorts of crazy stuff in there. All right. I, as usual, did not think of a question beforehand. So I was going to go super generic with a question and ask what your favorite genre is. But I think most people watching this would say horror. So we're going to go with, what is your favorite genre? If you had to pick, it's the only genre you could read for the rest of your life. What genre would you pick? And then what would be your next two? What are your next 2 favorite genres? How's that? It's simple. Of course, my answer is horror. And then probably mystery and sci-fi. I think that's the simplest answer. Decades ago, it might have been fantasy in there, but that's certainly not the case anymore. I don't know that media tie-ins are a genre, but I have plenty of that. Definitely horror. And then, sci-fi, mysteries, more hard-boiled detective kind of stuff. Although I have different mysteries. I have a whole series of mysteries that take place in feudal Japan. And I like when genres mash up, sci-fi mysteries and things. But those are my top 3. Horror, and then sci-fi, probably mystery, and then sci-fi nowadays. But anyway, what about you? What do you like to read? This is the biggest open general question I think that I've had on one of these videos. Let me know in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Wait, before I say that, I have to say, if you have any comments, questions, corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. That's Eric with a K. ERIKSMITH5757. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.